This last Tuesday, we recognized the lesser feast of C.S. Lewis, who died on November 22nd, 1963. For the occasion, I decided to look back at the final scene of the final book of his Chronicles of Narnia series, called The Last Battle. Now, as I leafed through it, my eyes fell on a quote that reminded me of our readings for today, the first Sunday of Advent. The quote is from the character named Lord Diggory, who you may remember as Professor Diggory from the first book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He's explaining to the other characters why the land they find themselves in, here at the end of all time, looks so much like the Narnia they knew, but also different. The old Narnia, he explains, was only a shadow or a copy of the real Narnia, which has been here and will always be here. This Narnia is as different from the old Narnia as a real thing is from a shadow, or as waking life is from a dream. The other characters listen and believe, but they have trouble understanding it at first. I suppose I would too. When I was a kid, I used to have a lot of trouble telling my dreams from reality. And it's probably why I had a habit of talking in my sleep. Now, I still do talk in my sleep sometimes, but now that I'm a preacher, I prefer to talk in other people's sleep. So, just saying. I remember how my dad used to catch me talking in my sleep, and sometimes getting out of bed in the process, although fortunately I never made it very far. He would tell me I'm sleeping and to get back in bed. But I didn't believe him, so I would argue my case. I would insist that I'm not asleep and I know what I'm talking about. Eventually, my dad figured out that all he had to do was flip on the light switch, and I would wake up for real and realize where I was. Now, after that, we didn't argue about it anymore. He just went straight for the light switch, and I went straight back to bed. It's funny how light has that effect on people. The Apostle Paul sees the light in today's second lesson. The night is far gone. The day is near, he proclaims. Let us lay aside the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Paul is encouraging us to wait for the dawn, but makes it sound as if it's our job to bring it about. Reminds me of a hearing impaired man that I greet on the mornings when I drop our kids off at school. And I'll say good morning to him, and he's had to remind me several times that this is morning. Good morning. And it's like we're bringing the dawn about. Good morning. Now, Isaiah sees the light too in today's first lesson. He sees it when very few others see it, and he keeps trying to flip that switch for us. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Isaiah speaks to us. He speaks to his countrymen in a time of war, a time of exile, a time of power mongering, frankly, a time of darkness, and paints a picture of light. A picture of all nations streaming to the mountain of the Lord, eager to learn the ways of peace and justice, and desperate to abandon the ways of darkness and violence. And if you look again, you'll see that familiar phrase in there. It may ring a bell. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. That means they decide to turn their weapons into farming tools. Now, you may not know this, about ancient Near Eastern societies, but to be honest, they had a bit of a sword problem. Sure, some people would go around saying, swords don't kill people, people kill people. And whenever a sword massacre took place, they would claim their society had a heart problem, not a sword problem. So beware of those politicians who want to take away our swords, even if those politicians claim to be calling for sensible sword laws. Oh, and spears, too. Don't forget the spears. Maybe an ancient Near Eastern person should pass a background check before owning a spear. Just a thought. But I don't hear Isaiah taking a side on the issue of swords and spears. He's not parsing between a heart problem and a sword problem, or whether it's a sword or a person doing the violence, because it's both. And sure, there are practical ways that we can make the situation better or make it worse here in the real world. But Isaiah was looking ahead to the larger reality of God's kingdom. Looking ahead to a time when people will consider their swords and their spears and say, I guess I don't need these anymore. But I sure could use an extra plow to produce enough food for everyone to eat. No politician will have to take away their swords, even if they want to. They'll get rid of them on their own. We won't need or want the tools of violence because we're not following the ways of a violent world anymore. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, that he may teach us his ways, God's ways. It's a beautiful thought. But let's get real. Is that depiction of the future, this peaceful future where we all just get along, is that just some fantastical dream? Or are we actually living in a nightmare that we can't wake up from? Is this the real world, or are we still waiting for the real world? We may not really know until someone flips the light on for us. And I think that's exactly what God is doing in these scriptures today, turning on that light to show us that the truth is, it's both. The ultimate reality, the kingdom, or as our Jewish siblings like to say, the tikkun olam, is here, and it's on the way. When Jesus talks about kingdom, and Jesus is always talking about kingdom, he talks as if it's already here and as if it's on the way. Welcome it and watch for it. Wait for it. Advent means coming. And the word coming can refer to the moment of arrival, but it can also refer to the journey that precedes it. Advent is here, and Advent is on the way. Welcome it, and watch for it. Wait for it. And if we've gotten tired of waiting for Advent, perhaps it's because Advent is waiting for us. We're waiting for the day when swords will be beaten into plowshares, and apparently we're waiting with swords in hand. It is coming, but not everyone is going to see it when it comes. I don't have to tell you this because you know it already. I believe that you have been there many times. You've had a moment where you can see beyond the pale, gazing at some transcendent truth, glimpsing breathtaking beauty, or discovering the matrix behind the facade. And you've tried to share it with someone who just couldn't see it. They might have even doubted your sanity. But Jesus understands. He says that where there are two in the field, or where there are two grinding meal, or two people doing whatever it is they do, Jesus knows that one may see the light and the other one may not. One is ready and the other's time is still to come. But if you want to be ready, keep awake. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Welcome the light and watch for it. Wait for it. And remember that the light is also waiting for you. C.S. Lewis had his own way of painting this picture. In that final scene of the last battle, his characters urge one another over and over to run further up and further in, to press ahead to higher heights, much like those ascending the mountain in the prophecy of Isaiah or this morning's psalm. The further up they go, and the further in, the truer and grander their reality becomes. Have you ever traveled to see something famous and marveled at the reality of it? I remember being in London and seeing Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament for the first time. It had lived in pictures to us our whole lives, and all of a sudden it's looming over us, and we thought, wow, this is real. We could look at 100 pictures of it or watch 100 videos of it, and none of it could prepare us for the experience of being there. This is what the real Narnia was like for these characters, as if they lived their whole lives inside of a picture book of Narnia, and finally stepped into the country itself. The unicorn character might have said it best when he said, "I have come home at last. This is my real country. I belong here." The reason we love the old Narnia is that it sometimes looked a little like this one. This is the land I've been looking for all my life, though I never knew it until now. Is it possible that you and I are living inside of a picture of God's real creation? And not a very good picture either. It's all ripped and torn and creased, and the corners are all dog-eared, and the ink is faded. And yet, the beauty is there if we have eyes to see it. It is there if we allow ourselves to wake from sleep, if we beat our swords and our spears, if we run further up and further in, if we welcome the Advent and watch for it and wait for it and realize that Advent may in fact be waiting for us. Amen.